All right, are you thinking of moving to Calgary and you want to know how much does it actually cost to live here? Well, good news. In this video, I'm going to do a deep dive into really all the costs for the average person to come and live in Calgary, and I think you're going to find this really helpful so you can make your plans to move here. All right, well, obviously the biggest thing is housing costs, and that is a big deal. And this is a rising market. A little bit of tidbit of information for you. These stats just came in. 185,000 people moved to Alberta last year in 2023. 81,000 of those people moved into Calgary. And what that's created is a little bit of a problem. We got a bit of a bottleneck here because we have a lot of people coming and we have a little bit of a shortage of houses. Now, I will tell you, the builders are doing their best to catch up, and there's a lot of projects on the go, and I think things will settle out probably into late 2025. So that just gives you an idea of where we're at. So currently, as of today, this is in April, mid-April 2024, the benchmark price for a detached house in Calgary is $739,700. If you're looking at a semi-detached, which is becoming really popular because they really look a lot just like detached houses, it just happen to be attached and a little bit less cost to build them, $658,000 for the benchmark price. If you go into row house or townhouse, and right now, by the way, that's the tightest inventory market in Calgary, $448,700 for the benchmark price. And just remember, the benchmark is a typical property. So some of these will be lower than that price, some of them will be more. Apartments, $337,700 is the benchmark for the average apartment in Calgary. That's typically a 2-bedroom. Now, rental prices, and you'll be happy to know that a lot of people do rent first. But interestingly enough, like a lot of these 185,000 people that moved to Alberta and 81,000 that came to Calgary, I think around, was it 30% were new immigrants to Canada, 30% came from Eastern Canada, 12% came from BC. So a lot of the new immigrants do tend to rent first. And the same idea here is we have a little bit of a short supply when it comes to rentals, so our prices have been rising on rentals. And right now in the low end, you're about $1,500 a month, and on the high end, on average, you can go to $3,500 a month. But a 2-bedroom, 2-bathroom apartment condo on average is about $2,200 per month. Okay, so the next expense that you're going to have to incur is hydro or utility costs. You're going to find on average it's about 14 cents per kilowatts. Now, you might think to yourself, well, what does that work out to in dollar amount? Well, it's really hard to say. I mean, I have to say, when it comes to utilities, obviously everybody is different. Depends on how many people are living in the home. It depends on whether you're really good at leaving lights on and turning them off. So there's a lot of factors that can really vary, but I can tell you, because we also do a lot of property management here in Calgary, so on average, you're probably looking at around $200 a month for water and electricity. And that's very, very much an average, because like I said, I've seen people have just water and electrical at like $500 a month. And you have to understand, in the winter months when it's colder, you're using a lot more electricity. When it's in the summertime and when it's light until 10:30 at night, you're not going to use as much electricity. So that's why it really averages it all out. And by the way, you can even get on a plan that averages your utility bill throughout the whole 12 months if you don't want to be in a position where it's really low in the summer and really high in the winter and it kind of messes with your budget. So really consider that if you're coming to Calgary. You also find when it comes to Alberta, there's a lot of choice when it comes to choosing your providers. So do your research and find the right provider for you. Similar as well as when it comes to electricity, you can pick your provider. Alberta is primarily natural gas. Well, after all, we are an energy province, right? Very few houses are heated by electricity and very few condos are heated by electricity, but you will find some that do have water heat. And the good news also is if you are renting an apartment, utilities are usually included. And of course, if you own an apartment building, in your condo fees, almost every apartment condo has the utilities included except electricity. And there's even some apartment condos that have electricity included, but that's not very common. So if you're looking at natural gas, and the good news is, especially if you're not living in Alberta right now, because we have lots of natural gas in Alberta, it's actually relatively inexpensive when it comes to natural gas. So you can heat a house on average over the course of an entire year in that $150 to $200 a month range. Again, keeping in consideration that the warm winter months, you're hardly using any natural gas, and then quite a bit when it's really cold in the winter time. But that is the real benefit to Alberta, is natural gas is the least expensive of any province in Canada. All right, big next one is internet. We all need internet. Nobody can live without internet anymore. And of course, you can go with the slow Wi-Fi, which is around $30 a month. But if you work from home or you really like to do gaming, like a lot of people do these days, or you just do lots of business, then you're gonna wanna go with the faster internet, and you're gonna be getting up around $100 a month. Primarily, Rogers/Shaw Cable and TELUS are the two largest providers in Calgary. Hey, by the way, when you're watching these videos, if you want to give me feedback, please put your feedback in the comments. I love the comments, and I don't care what comments you might have. I try to respond to all of them in a timely fashion. And you can also just reach out to me. Send me a text, phone me. I actually do pick up my phone. I'm probably one of the few people that still does. Or send me an email, whatever you prefer. But my contact number is on the screen. All right, another big one, food, groceries. Well, we all know we've seen a pretty big rise in the cost of food since the COVID days, and it's been affected here in Alberta. And because in Alberta, we have a very short growing season, and we primarily grow, wheat and that sort of thing in Alberta. So we're importing fruits and vegetables primarily from California. So even in the wintertime, you'll notice the price of fruit and vegetables goes up. It's a little bit less expensive in the summertime. I would suggest, not that I am advocating entirely for Costco, but if you look at the prices of Costco versus anywhere else, they do seem to be pretty reasonable, especially if you have a reasonably large family. But I think you will find, on the low end for groceries, maybe as a single person that doesn't eat a lot, maybe you can get away with $500 a month. I can tell you probably on the average family that has a family of 4 or 5, you're probably spending $2,000 a month. All right, transportation. Now, if you haven't lived in Alberta before, again, because we are energy, we are the lowest in Canada for price per liter for fuel. And currently right now in April of 2024, we're at $1.58. And that's pretty good considering if you go to our neighbors over in BC, they're a lot more. So it's nice to be able to have an energy province for that reason, but obviously, at $1.58 a liter, you want to really figure out your commute time and your commute costs. A lot of times people don't factor that in for their decisions on where they should live and their cost of fuel of getting back and forth. If you have to park downtown in Calgary, compared to Vancouver and Toronto, we're pretty reasonable. Compared to probably any other city in Canada, we're pretty high. It can really range from about $100 to $500 a month. So that means if you do work downtown, you might want to consider buying a bus pass and take the train or bus into the downtown core, and you can get a pass for $115 a month, which is really what a lot of people do to, again, keep costs down. So you'll find our public transit here isn't quite as sophisticated as, say, Toronto on their GO train. Even I find Vancouver a little better. But overall, Calgary has done a fairly good job on their public transportation. All right, let's talk about healthcare. Well, healthcare is covered in Alberta. And boy, I could talk a lot about this, and I'll try to condense it down because I can go on a little bit of a rant. Because right now we do have a shortage of doctors, and I will tell you, if you move to Alberta, it's hard to get a doctor right now. We need more doctors to come to Alberta. So hey, put the word out if you know anybody who's a doctor, because we could sure use them in Alberta. But that's the kind of the bad news, and the good news is it's all covered. You don't have to pay if you have an Alberta healthcare card. But initially, you may have to go to some of the walk-in clinics if you need to get any medical assistance initially when you first come to Calgary until you can actually find a doctor. When it comes to other benefits, I mean, it's great if you're transferring with the company, or you can work with the company and get some benefits like dental and eyewear and that sort of thing, massage therapy. That's also goes a real long way. Prescriptions, if you need any, can really, really help with your bottom line. Because these things really do start to add up if you need to get them on a regular basis. Okay, next one of course is insurance, and in Alberta, insurance is privatized, so it can really vary. This is kind of crazy. Our insurance business in Alberta is hard to follow. I know for me personally, I have a good driving record and I haven't had an accident. And so on one of my vehicles, I'm only paying like $1,300 per year. But again, it's really going to depend on your driving record. It's going to depend on what kind of vehicle you're driving. But the sky's the limit. I've actually know people who are paying like $6,000 a year for insurance. So this can really vary. And of course, life insurance, got to factor that in as well. There's insurance if you're going to be buying a property. If you're going to be buying a home, you're going to have insurance. If you buy a condo, typically the condo fees include insurance for the building itself. You just need to get content insurance, or even if you're a renter, you'll need to get content insurance because you want to make sure your contents are protected. That's relatively inexpensive. I've seen contents insurance for anywhere from $20 to $50 a month. Pretty reasonable when it comes to that. Fire insurance, still pretty reasonable in Calgary because we're not living in a forest. We don't have a big risk of forest fires in Calgary, so that's pretty reasonable. You do have to get fire insurance, by the way, if you buy a property with a mortgage. Mortgage companies will require that. Another big expense, of course, is child care. If you do have to work outside the home, and I think this goes for anywhere. It's not easy to even find child care, and when you do, it is expensive. And I think probably on average for one child, it's around $1,000 to $1,500 a month. But I've also seen that even go into the 2000s for one child for maybe some really extra special care, or maybe even needing aftercare. Like sometimes people can't pick their children up until after 5 o'clock. That all costs a little bit extra. So really budget that in if that's your situation. Now, extracurricular activities, well, I'd say both for adults and children. But if you have children, clearly we all need to make sure that our children are doing things that are good for them. Activities, outside of school are very healthy. So, we have a lot to choose from in Calgary. I mean, we are a very sports-minded town especially, but there is a lot of arts and music culture here as well. I think it's really important, obviously, to know what direction your kids are going to go in. Some sports are clearly more expensive than others. I know I had my youngest daughter in skiing. Skiing was not cheap. Hockey, for example, pretty popular sport. That's also pretty expensive when you factor in all the gear, the ice time. It can get really expensive. But there's also, we noticed like soccer is becoming a really popular sport. That's a lot less expensive. Music, theater, dance, basketball, swimming, those all are I would say moderately expensive. But I would suggest really doing your research and really finding out which sport or activity for your child that would be best for them. Do your research on that, do your homework, because you can get caught off guard if you don't think of this in advance. Now, when I talk about activities for the adults as well, I think one of the most important thing is having a membership for either a gym, or maybe you go to yoga, Pilates, whatever it is that you like to do to try to stay active. But me personally, I like a gym membership. I think it's great. I find gym memberships pretty reasonable. I mean, on average, $50 to $150 a month. For an average gym membership. There's some private clubs that are really fancy. You'd be paying a lot more than that. But YMCA, about $85 a month. Of course, with the YMCA, they do have swimming and they have climbing walls in some of them. So all kinds of extra stuff as well, which is actually pretty cool. And here's a really good program that I love. The Calgary Flames have sponsored this. If you have a child in grade 6, this is for 1 year only. You can get a sponsorship of the YMCA for free for 1 year if you're in grade 6, and that's a give back that the Calgary Flames have done for the community. It's right on the YMCA website to get kids active that are in grade 6. Great program. Well, they say in life the two guarantees are death and taxes. So yes, there are taxes in Alberta, but there is the good news. We have the lowest taxes in Canada. we only have GST. We don't have HST, which is great. Even our provincial sales tax is the lowest in Canada. So you are going to pay less living in Alberta, and this is, I think, one of the reasons why we're attracting a lot more people to be here. But there's really a lot of strategies when it comes to taxes, and I would recommend coming here from another province, get a hold of an accountant in Alberta, get some good advice on how you can structure your tax situation. Nobody wants to pay more than they have to, so you want to be aware of that. But believe me, I think the biggest mistake the average person makes is when they're shopping, they're always looking for what's on sale, where can I save more money, but they don't often put enough effort into their personal tax situation. Remember, taxes is the biggest expense anyone has in Canada. So you should be educated and get really good advice around that, because you can save sometimes thousands of dollars if you have a good tax accountant and a strategy around that. So the last cost, of course, is just, I'll call it the incidentals. I mean, it's just, none of us, when we're paying out our regular expenses of housing and groceries and all that, we still want to be able to do some other activities as well, like maybe go to a movie, maybe go out for dinner, some recreation, maybe there's enough to take a vacation with the family once a year. All of that obviously has to be considered into your budget. You will find when it comes to food, and I've been to a lot of different restaurants throughout Canada, and Calgary is pretty reasonable. I mean, you can still go to a pretty decent restaurant for anywhere around $20-25 a plate. Of course, we have a lot more expensive than that too, but I mean, there's lots of good restaurants that are in that $20-25 range. You can still get out with the family, and I think you'll even find our movie theaters are great, and they're still pretty reasonable. Just don't buy that expensive popcorn. All right, well, all these costs, obviously, they do vary quite a bit, but hopefully this video has been really helpful to give you a good solid average. And of course, you can always, as I said earlier in this video, reach out to me. You can send me a text, you can phone me, but also, these videos, by the way, obviously we put some good information into them, and the more subscribers we can get on this channel, I can tell you, the better videos I can put out. So if you've enjoyed it, hit the subscribe button. You can like it if you really enjoyed, and of course you can even get notified by hitting the bell button too.